some bad, some crazy, some rad. Commandos and bandits, they both just gotta have it. 9 to 5 warriors. They're your 9 to 5 warriors. It happens every day from 9 to 5.
Hello, everyone. I am very happy to be bringing you a special interview with toy designer Brandon Braswell, and he is the creator of the 9 to 5 Warriors. I thought it would be really interesting to see the whole journey from start to finish, from concept to action figure form. I think this is going to be really exciting and really, really interesting. So, Brandon, thank you very much for joining me today. This is going to be really, really cool.
Thank you for having me on, first and foremost. Yeah.
As a kid, then what were the toys that you really gravitated to?
I have right now my collection's like a mirror of that. I was in love with Ninja Turtles, hands down. They were my favorite. I loved X-Men, the whole Toy Biz situation. Everything from G.I. Joe's to like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and Star Wars. But Star Wars was weird. Like I only liked Ewoks, which is like everyone hates Ewoks. I'm like, for some reason, I just love them. As an adult, I had no interest in collecting toys. It was like really crazy how it all happened. And now if you look in my room, I'm surrounded by, this is a toy room now at the end of the day. Yeah. So like it all started randomly. Like I went to this restaurant in LA and they had like a waiting service where you could wait in a store next door, and happened to be a vintage toy shop. And as soon as I walked in, I got like smacked with nostalgia, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot that existed. Oh my God, I forgot this existed. Oh, that's awesome. And like I was so lit up by all of that, like rush of energy. I ran home, like literally started Googling things, and like memories just were instantly unlocked. Like for instance, Food Fighters. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about Food Fighters. This is freaking awesome. This is one of my favorites growing up. And my background, I'm a videographer and a storyteller. So I know the power of like creating video and like evoking emotion. And that was the first time for me to have that same emotion or like feeling through a physical product. And right there and then I was like, I want to make a toy. Ninja Turtles is just so unique. And that's what I'm hoping, like 9 to 5 Warriors, obviously that everyone's dream is like, oh, to be the next Ninja Turtles. But I'm like, what made them so special? Like back then, like toy companies actually threw shit on a wall and like saw what stuck, you know. They took chances, and there's nothing out there like that, and there still is nothing like that even in a market of just such creativity, you know. I want to recapture that magic of the Saturday morning cartoon era. What that means to me is like respark imagination. Going that route of 5-point articulation with these characters, there's an element of storytelling now in the posing. Like the poses you choose have to dictate that character. Like if a kid picked it up today with no backstory of who this guy was, without the card or even seeing a cartoon, like he could now understand like, okay, maybe he's a henchman, he's a bad guy, he's menacing, he's hunched over. Why is he a henchman? Like these little things that like went into the design process, which I think again, like with articulated toys, I personally, I'm a box collector first and foremost. Honestly, if I went the articulated route, which I would love to in the series like 2 or 3, you know, like the Creator Ultimates version, I'm not like knocking it. I would love to, but for this first round, I really want to like stay true to that 90s like feel. And to me, that was the limited articulation.
Was your family, you know, when you were growing up, you wanted toys, did they get into it? Like they got you whatever you wanted? They understood why you know, had to have these, that had to go with the show? I
remember mostly birthday parties were the shit back then, like especially if they were at McDonald's. I remember getting like, I think a majority of, if not the entire collection of Ninja Turtles one specific birthday. It was just like one after another. I don't know who coordinated it or if it really was that hot product that summer. I mean, like I remember everything I opened up was like Ninja Turtles collector, the party pizza wagon, and this like that, like every single thing. And yeah, my mother, thankfully, you know, I was the only child and she spoiled me. I'm super grateful for her. And I think we had fun like watching the cartoons together. That was a definite thing that we shared. And that like brings an extra sensation that nostalgia that comes in is just like that heartfelt time period of like, I had that moments with my mom, and then I took that energy from the TV show and then went ahead and like created my own adventures, you know?
Yeah, exactly. The stories, when I look back at some of like He-Man or that kind of thing, they didn't dumb it down. They didn't water it down, you know, and it was like probably, I don't know. I want to say maybe it was the first type of cartoon or series or something that was for kids where like even the villains didn't get along?
The more drama you put into it, like, and characters, you're always going to find someone that or a story that relates to you in some way somehow, whether it's like a bully at school or like just trauma between your parents, your brothers, siblings. Like there's always something on that inherent level of human behavior that we're always going to connect to if it's a good story.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So you started creating these characters. You had them in your head, and then you had them sort of sent off to be completely designed. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm not a drawer at all. I have the original PDF of me like taking from Photoshop things I loved, certain expressions I like from certain other characters, design inspiration, and like I created this PDF of like, here's what I want, and I sent it to just random Craigslist ad of an illustrator, and this guy brought them all to life through a couple of revisions, but he got them to like what I envisioned originally. And to me, that's the favorite part of creating, is working with other artists and like getting something out of your head that you have no physical means of creating yourself and getting it out there like pixel perfect.
So you had all these designs, you finally had them fleshed out, you saw exactly what they look like. Then you decide you want them as action figures. And we see them, we know what they look like now. And I think that's probably a big question for a lot of people, is how do you do that? How do you take this and then get the leap into action figure form?
The idea was always to make a toy, but I had zero knowledge in how to do so. I was very naive, and I would DM people like, hey, what factory did you use? Like, I don't know anything about anything. And I was like, the first thing, like, maybe the factory can help me. I have no idea how this works. Of course, a lot of people left me on red or gave me some confusing feedback and advice. But at the end of the day, like, I took the initiative, like, okay, if I'm gonna make a great toy, like, what did I love about him most? And going back to the whole importance of story, I just focused on that because that was within my wheelhouse. I can quickly Google, printing surfaces to print the trading cards or the print to comic books. So for the first 2 years of development, I focused only on story and trying to get that out there, enough attention so that the toys either came to me by like, hey, we'd love to make this a toy. Like, that's always my dream. Freaking Mattel or Hasbro knocking on my door, like, we saw your comic book. This is the next Ninja Turtles. Please take our money. But in reality, that never happens. And what unfortunately happened is just I lost steam. I started creating a lot, from cereal boxes to stickers to paper tanks and gliders. And the toys were what I really wanted. I just didn't see it possible. Like, they cost, toy making just out the gate, like, it's freaking hard. It's still really hard. It's still overwhelming. And it's a lot of money. And so cut to now, literally 10 years later, when I had the prototypes in hand, I thankfully discovered Scott Hensey through Instagram, and we started talking, and it was right around the start of the pandemic. So I'm home, I have this new inspiration to kick it back up again because my current job kind of like dissipated. I was in the travel business, and of course travel died. And there's just that need that like lingered for those 9 or 8 years that I wasn't active in 9 to 5 Warriors, just saying like, make the toy, make the toy, make the toy. So lo and behold, I started talking to Scott. I created the first 2 prototypes, and that's just took it from there. And now I have all 10, thankfully. And we can go into Scott Hensey. Like, he's amazing artist. He's actually one of the original sculptors for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line. He did all the bad guys. He's done Street Sharks. He's done Star Trek. He's done endless amount of Happy Meals. In fact, like, every time I end up talking to Scott or see him post something new, I was like, son of a bitch, that's one of my favorite toys too. Like, it's crazy. He like created half my collection without knowing it, When I was kind of tinkering with the idea of making toys, I did, again, Google search. I hired a 3D sculptor. I hired people that hand sculpted, and they had like terrible results. Like, I've wasted so much money. I don't want it to seem like, oh, and then ding, like Scott showed up magically. No, I tried to work with other artists. I tried with different designers, and I also didn't understand the language to use. And there's a difference between someone that could just sculpt in 3D, like make a 3D model, and then there's a freaking toy sculptor. And there's that, yeah, he could either do it in 3D or in hand like Scott does. But I learned a lot from those mistakes, very expensive mistakes, but I'm here now.
So you had all these elements together, and everything is in place. So now you are selling the action figures.
What you currently see in the commercials and on the photos and product, those are all considered prototypes. So half of them were done by Scott and by hand, so literally molded by in clay, wax, and then cast into a plastic resin. The other half is done by a 3D artist that like I worked with, and he got it right away too, you know, like he was sculpting, and I found that great dynamic of working with Scott and taking his work to the new age. So at the moment, they're all prototypes, and what I'm doing the raise for through Big Bad Toy Store is to get them into production, to get them into ejection molding, and to create them into actual toys that we're used to, where they're coming in a blister pack. They actually feel like legit plastic. They're all perfectly done by a factory. And that's where I currently need 500 of each to be pre-ordered to go into the next stage of production, which be molding.
So as you mentioned, you have 10 characters.
Yeah.
And that's actually that's a really fleshed out line. That's actually a lot. So you've got, I mean, I think it's, from looking at it, I think it's a really good selection. I'm surprised, but I think it's just amazing to see all the differences and all the backstories that you have. So is there a favorite character of yours that you have created the whole thing where you're like, this is my main one, this is my Optimus Prime?
Well, my secret favorite is Scotchy. He's behind me right now. He literally can repel and like wrap around other characters. He can actually be used as an actual tape dispenser.
He can really be Scotch tape holder.
Yeah, it actually works like straight on with rolls, and that was the way it was designed. But the other favorite, I would have to say, like what started it all was actually Major Eraser, because as a kid, like playing with my school supplies, I would create him 9 times out of 10. I would stick like a thumbtack in one of as an eye and then draw on the face and use paper clips as his arms and legs. And when I decided to create a toy, for some reason that popped into my head instantly. And at that time, with the rush of all the nostalgia, like Food Fighters always came to mind too. And I was always pissed that they didn't get like a cartoon or anything as a kid. Like they just were like a line that was thrown out there in the mess of all that like cool random shit being thrown out, and it didn't make it. But I was like, damn, they're cool. Like I used to play with those and the school supplies monsters that I would create. And so when it came to 9 to 5 Warriors, those ideas came to mind. I'm like, I could do that. The whole story is based off of Alan McMillan, who's like a office loner, and he has a very vivid imagination. And through the 9 to 5, you know, he's typically playing with his own office supplies and lunch. And through freak accident, one day they all get sparked to life essentially. And when he was speaking to them in the real world, you know, he dictated their personality basically. And since Colonel Custard was, you know, a donut that was stale, someone took a bite out of him and threw him in the trash. Basically, his objective is office domination. So every time he can find Jensei, which is the Japanese energy drink that created them all, he spawns a new character, and the water cooler commandos have to defeat them and maintain the peace. He's then followed in command by his main lady, which is Specialist Sugar, and she's made out of artificial sweetness. So she's fake. Her sweetness is very fake, and the tagline is "This beauty is a beast." She's like the strategist behind them. She's the brains behind the units. The other bandits don't give her any slack. And the cool part, she comes with 2 sets of arms and a shield. So she'll have 2 regular arms that are interchangeable, and then a shield that she can hold. Yeah, her premise is basically she can shift her way into any shape, object. So she's like the most dangerous. All that inspiration, like Jessica Rabbit, was definitely on there. And I
know already what my favorite one was.
When I saw you, I was like, I'm sure he'll appreciate that tidbit. Like I want her like essence, you know, she was just beautiful, but she was powerful and smart, and like it wasn't just like, oh, this is another girl character, we can dumb her out and just make her beautiful. Like she owned shit.
Yeah, that was the first one I saw, and I'm like, oh, I'm in. I'm completely in. This is already my favorite design of the whole thing.
And then I also want to showcase the Breakroom Bandits #2. And you may notice that he's a utensil, and all the other Breakroom Bandits are rotten food or some element of food. And Number two stemmed from the same pencil as his brother, Lieutenant Lead. And the story is when Alan again had a single pencil, it was his favorite pencil. It's the perfect supply for any tool. One day the office bully snaps it in half, and now he's left with two ends. And he's able to basically repair one side of the pencil because there's obviously an eraser and a point, and that became Lieutenant Lead. So he's still the perfect supply for it for any job, and he's perfect like in every single way. On the other end is number two. So he's a double-sided pencil, which basically you can't make a mistake with. So he's pretty useless. He's left in the drawer, and he feels that burden of never being able to make a mistake. One cool story about him is that Scott Hensey, going back to the sculptor, he designed Shredder, and I love that Shredder's pose was unique, even though a lot of collectors either hate it or love it because they might topple over or whatnot. But Shredder basically was put in that pose so that he could fit into packaging. But going back to the whole story element of like creating elements of story into a character's pose, like that's what stuck out to me. Like he's in that menacing crouch, ready pose, ready to attack. And I wanted something similar like that. The Water Cooler Commandos, they are led by Major Eraser, which this was the character I literally would draw as a kid and try to create, and he's basically Rambo, my version of it. He has a Sharpie, bow and arrow quill, some paper clips, and he'll menacing grill. Of course, I want him to smoke a cigar, even though it's kids. 90s, that was passable. Hopefully, it was still possible today. But Major is the cool backstory for him is like, since he's an eraser, he's literally there to fix mistakes. That's his sole job. So he's got this like internal complex of he sees what Colonel Custard is doing is creating these new spawns as just mistakes, and even their creation, which was created by a freak accident, is technically a mistake. So while he's trying to prevent Custard and maintain peace, his end goal, is probably more along like the Gorgonites from Small Soldiers, where they like sail off, because they know they don't belong, and if they're discovered, it's only going to be worse for humanity, So he has this complex going on in his mind at all times. So he does come off code to, his brothers in battle, but at the end of the day, his heart is pure, and he's just set out to do what's good.
Hearing you explain them and hearing how deep the stories actually go is amazing. It's just very much like that 80s, 90s nostalgia of really putting a story into it, and the look of the figures. I absolutely like envision these on the shelf in the 90s or 80s. Like they have that feel, they have that look. And clearly they're by the master of the 80s and 90s toys. I mean, so that's absolutely everything you needed to capture that feel, I think was probably in his hand.
Thank you, man. No, it's been that's what's cool too, is that like I worked with many artists in the past, and I see the magic start happening, like I'm sure you worked with people in your career, like they're like, hey, yeah, I could do the job. You're like, they're just getting paid. Like, it's cool. Every relationship starts like that in any of this, but it's the coolest part when you start seeing them get really animated and like they start imagining, and then like Scott, for instance, would like send me photos, and I see Pringles in his background, like actual chips, and him studying it, and then like an X-Acto knife that was broken and chopstick was broken, and I see him like creating his own weapons, and lo and behold, like that's the action figure thing, the figure weapon himself, and I loved seeing that. And the same thing happened with my other sculptors, that they get involved in the characters too. And like once they understand the story, then they start designing like, oh, maybe he should be hunched over like this. Like for instance, like Spore's designed perfectly so that like if you put a Major Eraser underneath him, he literally towers directly over him, and he's like the brunt force of the Water Cooler Commandos. So, and he's like the henchman, but he's also like half rotten, so his brain is not all there. And yeah, he's a little dumb, but he gets the job done. But
those are the characters we like. We like those characters that are little, to have that much detail, and I mean that just shows right there how passionate you are about it.
Thank God the reception has been really good. It's been an awesome journey so far, these like years that have passed, and I'm falling in love with them more and more each day. So like now I'm just dedicated. Like I can't wait for them to get actually made, and like be out there. I've been really keen on working directly with Big Bad Toy Store. Like they're just an awesome store that provides like a platform for like indie toys like myself. And I think that's just really special. Like Joel, the owner, has been awesome. Like from the first Kickstarter I did that didn't go through, I reached out to him for advice, what he thought, and he suggested adding more characters. He suggested going about certain ways. At the moment, they're all for pre-order, and the pre-order ends in January. So like if you're really interested and you're just like want to help create these guys, put them out into real world, please put in your pre-order. Like it means the world to me. What's good is the pre-order won't charge you until they ship, and they won't be shipping until obviously they meet their demand. And once the whole process of production happens, which won't be around summer of 2023, if not sooner, but that's the goal. And yeah, at the end of the day, like hopefully you guys enjoy what I've created, watch the cartoons, watch the commercials, everything, and fall in love with them like I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Because these are too cool not to have. So from all of this, where do you see this in the future? You want to do more? Do you want a cartoon show? Obviously, like where do you see it going after?
So if I get these guys across the line, I want to develop, to go along that whole theme of imagination. I think there would be a really cool accessory kits of like if I built like the plastic connection pieces so that you can use real life pencils, pens, tape dispensers, and create your own vehicles, barriers, defense systems, whatever. Like I like to think of it as like connects for adults. Like that's the next thing I'm actually currently testing out and developing. But overall, yeah, man, people are already asking me for vehicles, for, if they're going to have play sets and all these other things, that of course I want all that. And I have designs and sketches for days. It's just a matter of supporting and making sure that like the first series gets out there. And like once that's done, like I have complete faith that the rest will follow through pretty quickly. And Netflix one day, I hope they reach out to me and say, hey, let's make this into a TV show, because that'd be like the ultimate dream.
I think when people try to support things, I think especially when it comes to toys or figures or anything like that, I think that's always in the forefront of their mind. Like, okay, if I just support one series, is there going to be more? So you've got it all planned out. You've got the ideas. We know there would be more coming then.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Colonel Custard. He's constantly going to be creating new minions along the way. So there's endless characters in creation that are just on the shelf waiting to be hatched. I'd love to get into Army Builder and have eggshells and other commando units that literally can just be replicated and you create your own army of them. But yeah, there's a lot planned.
Nice. Awesome. Well, gosh, thank you so much for telling me all this. This is to me, this is all very fascinating, to just see it all take shape, to see all your great designs, all your great ideas. You have, really, really great stories going on here. So I could definitely see this being a show of some sort that people would be interested to. And we have so many of them out there, but I think story-wise, this feels very intricate. This feels very involved. I'm really excited to see this.
Awesome. I appreciate that, honestly. And thank you again for having me on. So appreciate it.
Yeah.
9 to 5 warriors. Just as the light gets lowered, that's when they all take over. At night, the fighting begins. There's no telling which side will win. Some good, some bad, some crazy, some rad. Commandos and bandits, they both just gotta have it. 9 to 5 warriors. They're your 9 to 5 warriors. Custard, it's always mischief. Eraser may try to fix it. It's mayhem in an office mosh pit. These are your 9 to 5 warriors. Gentle electricity brought them all to life, you see. This is how they came to be. Brought to this reality. It happens every day from 9 to 5.
Finally, a reason to go back to the office. Introducing 9 to 5 Warriors, an exciting new toy line created for the Toys R Us kid that never grew up. Offering 10 unique characters that are perfect for your cubicle or home office. The 9 to 5 Warriors are available through Big Bad Toy Store. Join the battle alongside Major Eraser and the Water Cooler Commandos as they keep the peace. or wreak havoc with Colonel Custard and the Break Room Bandits. Choose your side as these two forces clash over total office domination.
It happens every day from 9 to 5.
Warning, do not leave unattended. Each figure sold separately. When you punch out, they come punching in.